Hello and welcome to the Sustainability Skillset Podcast, a show where we explore careers in sustainability and the skills to help you succeed. I'm glad you're here. If you are passionate about sustainability and hungry to learn, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Louis Damaso, a sustainability consultant and young sustainability professional, learning right along with you. Today we're joined by Emily King, sustainability specialist at Schreiber Foods. We discuss the fact that a sustainability job means constant change and variety, which can be both the best and worst thing about it. And we reflected on the implications for who is best fit for this work. Emily described that her priority in sustainability leadership is creating a shared vision. Then she dove into strategies she uses to make sure everyone is on board and excited about making progress. Because she started her career in marketing, Emily uses her storytelling skills to win buy-in and move projects forward. We also covered how smarter data systems, including AI, can minimize the reporting grind so we can focus on making real impact. This is one of her biggest efforts right now. Emily also described what she looks for in sustainability interviews, providing some great tips for those looking to get into the space. I really enjoyed her playful energy and spot-on analogies for the sustainability world. I think you will too. Let's jump in. Emily, welcome to the show.
Hi, Louis. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's great to have you here. Could you start by giving our lovely audience just a quick introduction?
Absolutely. I'm Emily King. I am currently the sustainability specialist at Schreiber Foods, which is one of the world's biggest dairy companies, and I live in Madison, Wisconsin.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So what we want to do today is just understand a little bit more about what you do at your company and talk about the sustainability profession. So could we start by just a quick overview of what a typical day or week would look like in your role?
The word typical, that's the operative one. I don't think that really exists, but that's part of what I love about it. Not to, it's a pretty common expression, but having no day is the same, and that's sort of what I was looking for. But it can range. I can take you through the day that I had, which was, starting off speaking to our IT team about onboarding a brand new primary software, which will help track all of our ESG metrics. Moved on, talked to some of our customers in South America regarding maybe some collaborations in the farm space. And I ended my day, cleaning my inbox. But some days I'm on a farm. Some days I'm at the office in Green Bay. Some days I'm at a manufacturing site. It really does go the whole spectrum.
Yeah. Is that variety something that you were specifically looking for when you got into sustainability or into this job?
Good question. The truth is, I think I've always had jobs that have had a lot of variety after having a couple really early in my career that did not. So I'm not certain it was a conscious effort that I made. It was more because of the skills that I have, because of curiosity, because of, I'm very easily bored and I'm curious as a cat. So I needed something that kind of keeps changing and keeps evolving. And so I find myself in those spaces quite often.
That's so true. Yeah, I wonder if it's because of the sustainability space evolving so much that there's so much variety in the role, or if it's just that typically sustainability folks wear a lot of hats in their role.
Could be. Yeah, certainly could be, definitely. Yeah, I'm thinking, that question's making me think about my previous role in marketing. And I would do photography, videography, but then I would do copywriting, I would do design, I would do research, I would be on sales calls. I designed, trade shows. And so I think it does take kind of a certain personality in the sustainability space.
Yeah. Along those lines, what are some of the things that you find most enjoyable about your job and maybe some of the hardest parts as well? Is it the variety or is there something else?
Oh, well, it might be the same thing, Louis, to be honest. Yeah. That the hardest part is the best part. And, sustainability exists. If I know, sometimes in a nebulous realm, right? Especially, I work in corporate sustainability. I've had 6 years of working in corporate sustainability. And when you look at that capitalistic ideology, it's really difficult to get that sustainability puzzle piece to fit, to get it to click. It may fit culturally, it may sit, in terms of working on certain aspects of the business or in your supply chain. especially in agriculture, right? We see threat to the milk supply. We see threats to the food supply. Naturally, that's something you want to work on. But my very favorite thing is when I get to work on a project that doesn't have any ROI. And it's the hardest to get across the finish line. And they're usually really large projects driven by other catalysts, customers, regulations, consumers. And it's not a knock against, current structures of business. It's just the simple fact that we do have to play in a space that we don't have those traditional metrics.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you mentioned that those projects don't necessarily have an ROI in terms of direct payback, but they're driven by a customer or regulation or something that obviously provides value to the business to comply with. So how do you make that argument, or how do you approach those types of projects that don't maybe have a traditional ROI, but you want to communicate why you should still do them?
Sure. Well, I do start with, and it's an old trope, but I really do think that everyone, or most people that you meet in business, they know it's the right thing to do. Innately, they know that. But they answer to people. They answer to stakeholders and shareholders. And that right thing in those contexts usually mean, the little bump in the EBIT. But when I talk to leadership about it, I think the most important thing you can bring to the table is a vision. It's not about taking that one project and saying, okay, we really need to do this because customer Y is going to get real angry if we don't do it. It's about saying, this is who we are as a company. These are our values, beliefs, and this is how it all fits into our sustainability strategy and who we want to be in the future. And this is part of that puzzle. And so this fits the strategy that we have. I tend not to harp on reputation or those immeasurable metrics I was referring to, because they fall on deaf ears of maybe they should, in the business context. But I like to talk about the vision, tell the story.
I like that a lot. Leading with not necessarily a stick, but more so providing the through line for what you're trying to achieve as a company, and giving something that's worth working towards, not just something that's worth running away from or some kind of punitive measure, right?
Yeah, precisely. It's not just a carrot too. It's like a carrot cake. Come over here. Let's figure out who we can really be. And that's what, people can get behind that and people can believe in that. And that's what's so great about sustainability, is that you can kind of mold it specifically. There are always things you're going to have to do. You are required to do. But the story, the strategy, the vision, that is up to each individual corporate identity. And I think that freedom is something that I really enjoy building around that, and getting people to join in that vision and learning from others too. It's not something that's constructed in my head that I'm, throwing at leadership or the C-suite. It's saying, what does it mean to you? And going all up and down the ladder and learning a company, and then seeing, this is how sustainability makes sense for your future.
That's really powerful. How do you go about crafting that vision? I think you mentioned a little bit how you might talk with other people throughout the company, but is it mostly something that you create driven by certain requests from customers or stakeholders, or is it more of an internally generated vision?
A little bit of both. Good question.
Okay.
I like to, when I first start in a place, I like to visit as much as I can, each manufacturing facility, get to know, our cooperatives or our farmers, depending on how that structure exists within the company, and hearing their story and what it means for them every day, because ultimately they're the ones that have to do the work, they're the ones in the tactical space. And typically that is the most important part to me. I need the empowerment there. And so I try to understand just what the culture is in each place and kind of weave that into the quilt of what it means, when we get to more of the corporate level, when we get to the exec level. And, it can vary, incredibly. Obviously, we know in the US, sustainability, climate change, it's political. And we work all over the country. So people have different perceptions of what that means, or if it's just liberal jargon, or, I just try to connect with them as people first. That's the truth of it. It's like, I'm just a kid from small town Wisconsin. And these are the things that I think make a really great business. And so what does this mean to you? And if I hear, well, climate change is the crop of, can I swear on the podcast or not?
Yeah, sure.
Hooey. It's a crock of hooey. I won't make you bleep me out. Like, that's fine. Like, I just want to understand where you're coming from, because then I can start talking about efficiency. I can start talking about, empowering improvement in the manufacturing phase. Not like, hey, let's save the planet from melting. What if we were really, really good in Missouri at using water? And then I am going to brag about you forever and ever. Internally and externally, leadership, it can be a very different ballgame. But it all kind of comes down to relationships and crafting a message that is consistent, but it can also adapt and be suitable for all of your stakeholders.
That is a challenge, I feel like, sometimes, to be managing the narrative in a way that's consistent at a high level, but also crafting the message so it's relevant to individuals, whether it be managers of certain sites or marketing teams or this or that. But I think that's probably one of the core communication skills of a sustainability professional, is being able to adapt that message and adapt what you're bringing to different teams based on their goals.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Like, I say it and I enjoy it, but I'm not saying it's the easiest thing to do. It's really about making sure that core message, because you don't want to be insincere. It's not about that. It's more about recognizing the diversity of stakeholders when it comes to a sustainability program, right? And it can involve the language you use, but typically I get really focused on, and after 6 years of this, I was in marketing for 10 years. It's about sticking to that core message, but then just adapting it to where you're at, and who you're talking to. And you're always relating it. You're just kind of creating this big, octopus, right? It has many arms to create a sensible being, but each of those arms can do something different and should be doing something different to create the bigger story.
I love that. The sustainability octopus. That might be the cover of this episode.
Gonna have to patent that.
Yep. So we're talking about the big vision and how you craft it. What is something that you're excited about or working towards achieving right now in your role?
Right now, and it's quite disparate from what we were just discussing, but right now we're in the midst of centralizing our data. Yeah, I think I mentioned that's part of what I was working on today. And that's true for any company. That's a challenge. No matter the sector, no matter who I've talked to, data lives in many silos all over the place. And it's difficult to get them together for cohesive reporting, cohesive messaging. And that, what we're headed toward right now. And we're starting with a great company. They're actually a startup heavily focused on AI, and I think they're going to be a huge boon. Basically, like having another employee. Maybe that's why I'm excited. It's like getting somebody else on the team. But yeah, every sustainability professional is going to say the biggest pain in the butt when it comes to being in the space is reporting, because you have to report to all your customers, to NGOs, to international organizations. It's something you do weekly. And a software isn't going to fix that. Reporting is just part of what we do. And this is going to make sure that we spend half the time that we are right now doing that.
That sounds amazing, to have an extra team member and reduce the reporting time. Yeah. Could you describe a little bit about why the software is critical and kind of how data management is difficult within a company?
So working with the company I am now, who is wildly successful in the space, and so clearly what they're doing is working. But sustainability, and I think you mentioned though, it's like it evolved so quickly. You have new metrics you have to tap into all the time, and that's part of what this is going to bring us. Is kind of bringing that large language model LLM, kind of turning a database into an LLM so that we can pull from that across the company, across departments. Because that's the other thing, right? Like any company that you talk to, the biggest company out there, I promise you, someone on their sustainability team is using spreadsheet. Promise.
Mm-hmm.
And it's impossible to get away from. And it may be that way for some time. And that's just how it is, and that's fine. But that's another thing that what software is really going to help is that you have to talk to, I don't know, every department in the company at one point or the other. And so instead of receiving, a little bothersome email from me like every other week asking for a small piece of data, all I have to do is ask the robots and they'll go find it for me. It's really, really, it's going to be a game changer.
And what will that additional capacity that you free up by letting the software and the robots handle the reporting, what do you think you'll do with that?
Impact. It's that simple. Right now I'm working with a set of really ambitious goals, and that's the place I like to be. But that's the time that's taken from you, or that's the time you have to dedicate when you have customer requests or anything like that. It takes priority, it takes precedent, because it's in the moment, it's in the day-to-day, and it's really easy to check that off your list. It's a lot harder to reduce our footprint by 3,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent off your checklist. So it gives you the bandwidth to start looking at the whole footprint that you have in front of you, that you now have confidence is being measured accurately and in a timely manner, and say, okay, what's our focus? Let's go do this. And so you can take that 50% of time that you saved and start bringing those numbers down.
Yeah, because it takes time and energy to identify solutions, try to figure out what would work with the business and everything. So that sounds like freeing up the time that you would have spent reporting, you can spend it looking for solutions and actually driving that impact, moving towards your goals, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you can go out and look at really creative notions too. Like you have time to do that. Like you can get into a little bit more depth when you're looking at, I don't know, food disposal, right? Mm-hmm. Well, there's vermiculture. There's, you can have worms eat up all of your food. And like, you don't really have time to just tap somebody on the shoulder and say, hey, can we get 1 million worms put at this site in Utah? Like, you have to have a lot of discussion. And, you have to do a lot of comparative analysis. You have to also, once you're, pretty comfortable with the measurement of your footprint, then you're going to go forward, through like 10 years or so, and then backcast. And you're going to understand year over year what your reductions need to be against what is probably a growing footprint. And that's definitely what we get to do. That's the fun part. And I think that's a pretty common thing too for sustainability professionals. There is really no greater privilege in my life than to get to work on and to see to fruition projects that help, efficiency. They hopefully also make people's lives better, and whether that's at our facilities or just kind of on that longer timeline stretch, and that lower our carbon footprint.
I love that. That's why so many people are looking to get into sustainability.
I know, it's secret little key.
Yeah. You talked about data management and how that will unlock for you the time and resources to move towards impact more. And I think it's well echoed in the last episode that we did on this podcast, where I spoke to an actual data architect as well. And he was talking about how, setting a foundation of data really enables those key insights that sustainability professionals can use to drive impact and identify what to do next. And we even got a little meta with it and talked about sustainability as an industry. And I think it's interesting that it seems like we're all having the same conversation around reporting is really hard. There's too many disparate requests. The systems aren't there. Excel sheets are wonderful, but very complicated sometimes. And I feel like maybe we're reaching this precipice where the technology is getting there. Multiple big companies and sustainability teams are getting there. And we might start to see impact and progress towards goals accelerate once we really do get our sustainability houses in order collectively. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I do. A greenhouse is a fragile one. It's always in process of being built. And understand this as a myopic statement. I don't really think about it all that much. I do the best I can with what I have, knowing, that every move that we make, every software we try, every piece of feedback that we give is getting us closer to that perfect solution where we can all sort of throw reporting out the window. We'll have, basically live trackers on our carbon footprints. And I've imagined this, right? I'm like, what if we had a customer portal where they can click in and then they just see what their footprint is within our business? We can see from each of our milk cooperatives, we can see like down to the farmer, blockchain on, just on another level, right? And I completely understand and empathize with the frustration, because sometimes that's me. Sometimes I don't understand why the equation is not copying to the other cell. And we all have that day we want to throw the laptop off the balcony, and that's fine. But there will come that day. It's just, I don't think it's going to be a flip of a switch, because we all have such unique needs, for each of our businesses. Even within the same industry, they're very different. So it takes, I think, also a level of continuity when you're creating a sustainability program to at least get that notion of like, what does that ideal, data infrastructure look like for us? And how can we get there? And is the tech there yet? And are we there yet? Do we have enough people on the team to be able to manage a system like that? And for now, yes, that it can be very frustrating. And we're all using different systems, and we have to learn a billion different things all the time about how to report to our customers and governing bodies. But at the end of the day, I think this is it's essentially adolescence, like with the sustainability going through puberty. Okay. Like it's just going to take some time. It's going to be kind of ugly. And then we're going to hit our 20s, think we're going to get wild, and our 30s we'll start to maybe kind of figure it out. But I just think this is naturally part of the process.
Sustainability aging process. I like that.
The aging process. Yes. As I'm aging.
So we've talked about data management, which is a big one, and communication a bit, and crafting those narratives. But those could be part of it or not. But what do you think are some of the most essential skills that you use in your career, whether they've gotten you to where you are today or that you use regularly now? And they could be technical skills or soft skills.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk soft skills, and we'll see if I can get to hard skills. Reason being, I have the absolute pleasure of working with a lot of young people that are coming into this space. So, they're like 21, 22, just getting through undergrad, wondering, do I go get my master's? Do I kind of get specialized in sustainability? You got the hard skill. Like, you'll be fine. You're part of, the generation that's going to understand all of this tech more innately than the generations before you. The soft skills you need, I think, are the most challenging. Yeah, and I spoke to it before, but I do think that you need to be a naturally curious person, because you have to cover so many different topics. And it's awesome. But, you do have to have that natural inclination to want to learn a lot of different things. And, it reminds me of that quote, the jack of all trades, master of none. But the end of that quote is, but better than a master of one. Like, that jack of all trade it's really just talking about, like, it's not necessarily the best choice to throw yourself in a niche. Like, don't find that, pigeonhole it. Be good at a lot of things, and kind of you have to enjoy being good at many, many things, being great at some things maybe, And then flat out just not being very good at things because you have so much to learn consistently. So if you're somebody that likes to burst out of the gate and say, I'm incredible at this, I have a natural knack, it's going to be a tough journey for you. And I say that because I was that person. It was really difficult to just learn and admit and accept what I wasn't great at and just focus on learning those aspects of the job. I'm part of that with public speaking. Come to think of it, I was really abysmal, and I despised it. I just, sweaty palm. I was just like Eminem, right? Like every time before I went up on a stage or like in a small room. But I realized it was such an important part of being in sustainability and doing this job. So it's like, okay, I better figure out what does it need to me to be good at this? How do I, not feel like I'm going to vomit spaghetti every time I'm going to go talk to a bunch of people? But, the other thing in that vein is really resilience. Because you have to learn a lot of stuff and you might not be great at all of it. B, you're going to hear some no. You just are. Yeah. You're going to hear some big ones sometimes, depending on the readiness. And, especially on, I can't believe I'm going to say the term, but VUCA, right? On this volatile world that we live in, like nothing is certain. And those things, those outside factors change, and that can change the answer you get. You could have gotten a yes yesterday, but you asked today. So you're going to get a no, or you're going to get a maybe next year. And you have to learn how to at least put things down, file them away, sometimes walk away from something and focus on where you're going to get those wins, because that's how eventually we're going to make impact. You kind of have to snowball that. I would have to say,
and keeping motivation throughout that, right? And keeping motivation throughout that. Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. To keep motivation, I do think you have to bring a fair bit of levity along with you. And I had I get to enjoy conferences with sustainability professionals, and I have to say we can be kind of a fun bunch. It's a dark topic that we have to delve into all the time, like on a daily basis. And, it's like, oh my God, the world's going to end. And, for us, it's, well, yeah, maybe, but we're going to try our damnedest to make sure it doesn't. And yeah, it's that resilience, that, keeping up your energy, super, super important. But I would say so it's like kind of staying positive and, celebrating your wins, I guess, on the flip side. That's actually, I had thought about that before we had this call, but, you're going to have to get over your losses, but the wins, even the little ones, just, I don't know, do a dance around your office, do what you got to do, but like give yourself a moment of applause for getting something over the finish line, because whereas, and this was, again, not a knock, but in other spaces, it just may be more clandestine or just assume that these things occur. You finish a project and it goes, and it, goes through its motions. And in sustainability, you got to really capture those moments and make sure you share them and make sure you celebrate other people. And, I think finally, on a little rant, I would say gratitude, like, and that kind of encapsulates all of that, right? This is, I told you, it was like a special little key, right? You can work in corporate, you can work in nonprofit, you can work anywhere. And now there's a huge, big space where you get to go make a difference in the world. And isn't that really what all of us want? Like, is to just do something that we're good at and to do good for the planet and, for other people. And so sometimes that's really what you have to fall back on a really bad day and on a really good day. I mean, that's the through line. That's the common thread. That's the beautiful privilege of this work, is that this gets to be, the first global effort towards the goal, towards a unified, for the most part, yes, we'll talk about Paris, but a unified goal. We're all working towards the same thing, and that is to better the world. And what is more creative or awesome, like, to be able to work in this time, despite all of the hardships and how, objectively terrifying it can be. But that's honestly kind of the backbone that I use.
Love it. We need as many people as we can working on it too. And that's one of the other throughputs of the conversations I've had here, is that it's not just people that went to school for sustainability or environmental science, but marketers and people in the medical industry and people who know business and people who are in operations and fix machines. Like, everybody is involved in some way. So recognizing how you can be involved and drawing motivation from that, I feel like it's pretty important as well.
Absolutely. I would say every job's a climate job, because it really is.
Yeah.
And it's going to take all of us.
So I like the perspectives that you've shared in terms of how to keep motivated as you work in this space, and trying to get kind of tactical. Like, when you're talking to those young professionals that you mentioned earlier, let's just say you're trying to hire, or you're looking for a new hire on your team. How would you guide someone to be like a great fit for the person that you would hire for your team? Like, what would you be looking for?
Don't use AI. I know you really want to, and I do think it's applicable in some spaces, but if you're using AI and speaking the answers it's spitting out to you, I'm going to know. I'm going to recognize that immediately. And really, what I want young people, and I will get to the advice, but what I want them to know, what I want you all to know, is that really come into space and be yourself. And I know, yada, yada, you've been hearing that since you were 5. But the truth is, if you come in and you show, a hiring manager, or say, a me, who you are, and then I'll share the same, and we become a good fit, that's going to save us both a lot of strides. And that's ultimately what you want, is just to fit into a company where their culture matches your value. And even if you might, maybe you take it a peg down if you're just trying to break into the space. I did. It just makes sense. You got to get your foot in the door somewhere. But yeah, so don't use AI. I would come in, talk about your achievement, make sure you write those down. And you might think like, oh, hey, I just finished my grad program. Like, what do I know? Or like, what do I have? I promise you have so much more than you know of. I would share also some of your soft skills. Don't hide those away when people ask for example. It's important for us to kind of look for the traits that I mentioned earlier, because, we've had a few interns, and actually the one that we had hired most recently didn't have any experience in sustainability, and was stacked up against some people who did. But just getting to her interview, I know it surprised me too, but going to the interview, I knew that this person was of integrity, that they were going to work hard. I knew that they were exceptional when it came to mathematics and science. And so I'm saying that to also note that if maybe you didn't major in sustainability, because I didn't, don't be afraid to apply, especially for corporate positions and you're sort of, in that operational sense. Like there's room for that. There's space for that. There's a need for that kind of expertise. But ultimately, that's really it. You're just looking for a good fit. You're looking for, hopefully a decently easy conversation. We're going to see what kind of by running you through the job description. But when you talk about your successes and your failures, use your hard skills and your soft skills. But it's really just about being yourself and like showing up for yourself in that day.
Yeah. So it sounds like it sounds like the technical requirements or the hard skills like will be there in the job listing. And you're saying, you'll want to try to address those in some way, but the harder part is trying to let your personality shine and let the soft skills shine. And I like that you mentioned that you were looking for those specifically because, for me, it feels like, okay, so the ability to stay positive and the curious mindset and everything is more like a personal coping thing. Like I want to be successful by using these skills, but it's also important to communicate them outwardly if you're trying to get hired and actually give examples for someone like you who's looking for somebody with those traits. I think that's a cool insight too.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And I think it's fair to share your interests as well, because corporate sustainability, you might not get to work on conservation as much. I'll throw out a broad term. right? But don't be afraid to talk about things that are a little outside of the position too. It's
I like that.
yeah, because you're going to come in and you're going to say your elevator pitch, this is me, this is where I live, I have a dog, all is great. But like the truth is, I also want to know what other spaces are you interested in? Because even if it's not in the job description, there may be something on the horizon for us that we would like to have somebody, or we would like somebody that can do research and, at an entry level position or an internship. Frankly, I think you have a little bit more freedom. And if you share those interests, then, at least I personally am going to make sure that you get to explore those. And particularly if they're pertinent for the business.
Yeah. Could you describe a little bit about how you got to where you are today? We're talking about how anyone could get there, but maybe your career journey.
My career journey. That's a good one. Well, okay. So here's how it went. I actually went to 4 different undergrads. I'll just blame it on the curiosity, Lewis, right? But 4 different universities. I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. I started in poli-sci. I went to philosophy. I knew I was into the arts at that time. And then I kind of landed on journalism because I loved National Geographic. That's what I was going to go do. I was going to go, take pictures of monkeys and birds with like weird mating dances. Like that's all I wanted to do. And photography. I thought I'm going to be this little powerhouse. I can write and take photos. And so I thought journalism, that's great. And so 15 years ago, graduating, got my undergrad degree, worked a couple odd jobs, moved to Madison, Wisconsin, where I'm at now, got a job at a newspaper. Wasn't a good fit for me. It was very repetitive, but entry-level jobs in journalism tend to be, you're going to see a lot of press releases, that kind of thing. Then I moved, that newspaper actually had everything to do with cheese. And living in Wisconsin, I work for a dairy company. I've worked in the dairy industry for 15 years now. I always joke that, in other countries, they require military service. In Wisconsin, they just require cheese service, just for a couple of years when you get out of school. Because what else are you going to do? So ended up moving into marketing for a cheese company and had a hell of a lot of fun. I got to travel all over the U.S. I was part of these, food, cheese photo shoots. I went to trade shows. I met amazing people, and I got to go abroad. It was an incredible experience. About 6 years in, I started getting this little twinge in my gut, like, hey, I think it's time for you to move into a different space. And it wasn't because I wasn't having fun. Yeah, I was having a wonderful time. I worked with great people. It was because I knew there was something else, and I knew that something else, I just wanted it to be, I wanted to change the world. Like I always, for the better, save the world, what have you. I'll say that on my gravestone. Like she didn't save the world, but she tried really hard. And so I look at, that past, and I instantly, it didn't feel like it at the time, but truly instantly thought of conservation, sustainability. Yeah, I had always had, been outdoorsy, grew up with that sense of responsibility for the planet around me, thanks to my parents, even though that wasn't even really what they were trying to teach me at the time. But it was a sense of responsibility for the impact that I have on the world. And I thought, well, maybe I'll go be an environmental lawyer. And then every lawyer I talked to said, God, don't be a lawyer. I think they just didn't enjoy being lawyers. And they also said they thought I would get bored. But then there was environmental engineering. So I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, sat down with an engineer and one of the deans and said, okay, what if I came back and did this? Well, my background is arts. I would have to drop out, go back to school for 4 years, and I wasn't ready to do that. And then, lo and behold, right after the pandemic hit, the parent company of where I was reached out and said every subsidiary had to have a sustainability ambassador. And I thought, no way. And I raised my hand immediately. Less than a year later, there was a position carved out for me, the first sustainability position in the more global community of that company. And then I thought, well, I think I just figured out what I want to do. And so during the pandemic, I got my Master of Science in Sustainable Management from UW. And that, yeah, so it was a stumble, flip, fall, roll over, and here I am.
I love that you described how you just felt that twinge of wanting to work on something that was bigger than you, because I think that that's how a lot of people get into at least looking for sustainability roles. And then raising your hand and offering help, I feel like, is another big thing that I take away from that story in terms of, companies are looking for help with sustainability. And if you have a dedicated sustainability department, then I'm sure you can speak to the fact that they probably need help. Or if there isn't a dedicated sustainability department, then that's an opportunity, right? Like you found.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, then that's an opportunity. That's really great. I mean, I do really felt like it was, where they say that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. That's exactly what that was. It was just knowing the opportunity when I saw it. And I love the idea of, kind of promoting that, building an internal team as a way to get into sustainability, because eventually every company is going to need that type of expertise. And so identifying ones that maybe don't have a dedicated team, good way to go about it.
Yeah. So maybe you just get a marketing job for a cheese company and start there, right?
Yeah. I mean, it worked for me. It can work for you.
That's wonderful. I want to end on a question that is a little broader, and that is, what's a problem in sustainability that keeps you up at night? Not because it's hard, but because no one's thinking about it the right way.
It is. So this one, I've been giving the same answer for about 2 years now. It's freshwater availability. It's when I do research, it's hard for me to get started on it because it just gives me the feeling of getting punched in the gut, because it already is, a pernicious issue in parts of the United States, all over the world. And it has this sense, like, you remember like day zero in Cape Town, like 5 years ago, where they were going to run out of water. That day came and went, and then nothing happened. I mean, they figured out how to adjust their water supply, but there wasn't much talk about that. It was just day zero and then move on to the next thing. And while, in agriculture, and all of the work is fantastic, right? On focusing on wastewater. The big focus for us is making sure that we can send as much water back into the whole hydrological system as we possibly can. The reason that I think sometimes people think of it incorrectly is that water, to me, is the most wicked problem we face. Sustainability of the whole can almost take a second seat. In fact, a pal of mine, I was opened an entire conference day by saying sustainability or climate change will kill a lot of us, but a water shortage would kill us all. And it just has stuck with me. And it's such a dark place to end, I'm afraid, but it really is. It is something that we look at incorrectly, I think, because, particularly in some of the indigenous communities within our country, water has just become another commodity. And it should be a human right, that access to fresh water. And I also think that everything is thought about in economic terms, right? The capitalism is the beast that we made and can't stop, apparently. But it doesn't fit. Water is too cheap in some parts of the world. And so what I thought, at point in time, is when we look at the laws around packaging, right? Extended producer responsibility law, perhaps we should start looking at water the same way. I just think that fresh water intake is the one thing that can still scare me. And I think it's immensely inequitable, the way that water is distributed around the world and cleaned and cared for. And I see some companies certainly take an interest to reduce their water use, but as an overall issue, that's the one that makes it really hard for me to sleep sometimes.
Yeah. Do you see solutions at all, and especially in the agriculture industry in which you work? Are you optimistic that there are solutions or that the industry is pursuing them?
Heck yeah. Yeah, I mean, there certainly are options out there. There's some really cool overlays happening with other industries too, with cleaning water and water reuse. Because it helps because it makes business sense to be reusing water and not pulling in, and the municipality is going to love you for it, right? So yeah, there's definitely it's occurring. I just do not believe that it's happening on the scale that it should be. I think this is something we should be concerned about on a daily basis, and that scale is not there quite yet. We talk about carbon footprints until we're blue in the face, but
Right.
ironically, just we talk about water footprint, sure, but I would rather talk about this first, if I'm honest.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a challenging issue. And hopefully people who are passionate about it will find some motivation to get into sustainability for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Louis, sometimes what I think I give myself the advice that I give other people when they come to me, and this can be friends, family, whomever, and say, I'm really worried about climate change. And I'm like, who the hell isn't? But, it's that deep-seated fear that you can recognize in another human. And I say, well, sometimes I am too, but there are millions of people working on this problem, and many of whom are smarter than me and better than me, and are doing incredible things in the space, and I'm just ready to keep up. And and then there's everybody else. Like, there's so many people working on this problem, despite the headwinds, despite federal headwinds in particular. I think that sparked a lot of concern this past turn. But the truth is, there are a lot of people working in it, and there are a lot of people interested in working in it. And if we can keep this momentum, we're going to figure this out.
Like that a lot. That's fantastic. And if you were to get all those people working on it in a room, I'm going to let you flex your public speaking skills here. What would you say to them as a place to leave this?
So I've thought a lot, I think, cerebrally or philosophically, like, if we're all going to get in the same room, we have an urge, or a negativity bias, right? We know that's part of our survival skill. And so we have to look at the negative portions of a problem so that we understand how to solve them. And so it often brings me around to the consideration of optimism and pessimism, right? And there's a podcast like Outrageous Optimism, right, with Christiana Figueres, and just crazy, amazing person in the climate space. But the more I've dug, I think it's really about hope, and it's about tethering to one another for a sense of hope, not optimism. Optimism can be foolish, but hope is gritty, it's studied, it's serious. And that's, I think, what I would say to a room full of people is, today, let's have hope. And if you don't have enough, just lean on somebody else until you fill your cup up again. Because optimism is not going to get us there, but hope can.
Thank you, Emily. I so appreciate your time today. And I'm sure that our listeners are really enjoying this conversation as well. So,
well, thanks, Louis. This was so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.